I've been playing pretty good. We've been winning, so that's it. That's all I gotta say.
Nah, I'm good. Thanks for asking, though. But yeah, I'm good. I'll let my game do the talking.
I think I should lead the race, and try to make sure that until the end of the season, there's no debate.
Somewhere in an NBA office right now, a voter is staring at a spreadsheet, coffee going cold, genuinely unable to pick one name. Not because the race is close, but because depending on which number you look at, 4 different players are the undisputed MVP. That has never happened like this before. Every single morning this season, a new metric drops, a new argument surfaces, and the race flips again. Analysts who were certain in January are hedging in April. Voters who locked in their first place vote months ago are quietly reconsidering. And the fans, they've picked a winner too, except their winner probably can't even qualify. This is not a normal MVP race. This is the most statistically chaotic, analytically frustrating, genuinely entertaining MVP conversation the NBA has ever produced. And we are going to break every single piece of it down. The numbers, the teams, the metrics, the media, the markets, and the moments that keep flipping this race on its head. 17 of the last 20 most productive seasons in NBA history happened in just the past 8 years. Let that land for a second. The game has changed at a structural level. The pace is faster, the spacing is wider, the shooting volume is higher, and the players are more skilled than at any point in the sport's history. The numbers have inflated across the board, and this MVP race sits right at the center of that inflation. 4 players, all putting up numbers that would have been considered generational in any previous era, all competing for the same trophy at the same time. Here's what makes this year genuinely different from every other MVP race in recent memory. You have the surgical assassin who almost never has a bad game, whose efficiency at his volume has only been matched once in NBA history. You have the alien, a 22-year-old who is bending the laws of basketball physics on both ends of the floor simultaneously. You have the old genius, a center making a 28-point triple-double look so routine that people have started to take it for granted. And you have the people's champ, the most electrifying scorer on the planet, that the voters won't touch because of a rule on a calendar. Normally, just one of these seasons ends the conversation entirely. All 4 are happening at the same time. And if you're new here, Hoop Action TV is closing in on 1,500 subscribers. And every single one of those subscribers found this channel because we go deeper than the highlights. We use the actual numbers. We build the actual arguments. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this video with one NBA fan in your life who needs to see a real breakdown. Now let's get into it, because this story deserves every second of your attention. Before we break down each candidate individually, we need to establish the environment they're competing in, because without that context, the numbers don't mean what you think they mean. The NBA is in a full-on stats explosion. Numbers that used to define an entire era are now just a Tuesday night. Think about what the 50-40-90 club meant 10 years ago. Joining Westbrook and Luka in that club used to feel like a parade, a once-in-a-generation achievement that immediately elevated a player into all-time conversation. Now it barely trends for a full day. The league-wide three-point volume is at an all-time high. Pace of play has accelerated. Offensive systems have become more sophisticated, and the players executing those systems are more talented and more versatile than at any point in the sport's history. Here's the uncomfortable reality of where we are. A stat line of 31 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, a line that would have been considered elite, historic even in the early 2010s, now looks almost average, sitting next to the top MVP candidates this season. A player averaging those numbers right now would struggle to crack the top 5 in the MVP conversation. That is the environment we are operating in. Triple doubles used to lock up MVP awards. Russell Westbrook won the trophy averaging a triple-double. That was considered a historic, unrepeatable achievement. This season, you can average a near 30-point triple-double and still find yourself 4th in the MVP conversation, behind players whose numbers are simply more extraordinary. When everything looks historic, nothing hits the same way anymore. The bar has moved, and it has moved dramatically. So in order to evaluate this race properly, we need a framework, a smarter lens that accounts for raw production, efficiency, advanced metrics, team context, and real-world impact. We are going to build that lens right now, and by the end of this breakdown, you will have every piece of information you need to make your own call. Here are the 4 names actually in this race, their numbers, their situations, and why each case is legitimate enough to take seriously. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 31.5 ppg, 4.4 reb, 6.6 ASD. The best player on one of the best teams in the entire league. His game is methodical, precise, and almost disturbingly consistent. He does not have bad nights. He does not go through slumps. Every single game, he shows up and produces at an elite level with a consistency that is almost mechanical. He fits the classic MVP shape, dominant scorer, efficient producer, wins piling up for his team. The voters love this profile, they always have. Victor Wembanyama, 25 ppg, 11.5 reb, 3.1 blk, under 30 minutes a night. The frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year by a considerable margin. Two-way player the sport has genuinely never seen before in this combination of size, skill, shooting, and rim protection. 22 years old, he is operating at a level that defies every historical precedent for players his age. The conversation around him is not just about basketball, it is about whether the sport has produced a player like this before. The honest answer is no. Nikola Jokic, 27.8 ppg, 12.8 reb, 10.8 ASD, on pace to lead the league in both rebounds and assists simultaneously while finishing near the top of the scoring race, as a center. In 2026, the three-time MVP is doing something that has no historical comparison, averaging a statistical triple-double at his size and age, with efficiency numbers that put him in the conversation as one of the most impactful offensive players in the history of the sport. The advanced metrics love him. The voters have rewarded him before, and the argument for a fourth MVP is not outrageous. Luka Doncic, 33.6 ppg, 7.8 reb, 8.3 ASD. He dropped 60 and 50-point eruptions this season. He averaged nearly 40 points a game for an entire calendar month. The raw production case for Luka is the most visually stunning of any player in this race, and yet the hamstring injury has almost certainly kept him under the 65-game threshold that the NBA requires for award eligibility. The spreadsheet has a bouncer. Luka's season is gorgeous. It is also in all likelihood a footnote in the trophy conversation. Now we get into the actual numbers, and this is where the race stops making sense in the most fascinating way possible. Jokic's line is cartoonishly good. Averaging basically a 28-13-11 as a center is basketball alchemy. There is no template for this. Centers are not supposed to lead their team in assists. Centers are not supposed to be simultaneously among the league leaders in rebounds and scoring while also functioning as the primary playmaker. The fact that Jokic is doing all of this at age 31 while making it look effortless is one of the most remarkable individual statistical achievements in the modern era of the sport. Luka's 33.6 ppg is the single most eye-popping individual number in this race, but the 65-game rule cuts the conversation short before it even gets started. It is genuinely unfortunate because on pure production, Luka's case is extraordinary, but the rule exists for a reason and it applies equally to everyone. SGA's 31.5 points comes with a detail that does not get enough attention. He has the fewest turnovers per game of any 30-point scorer in league history this season. He is not just piling up points. He is doing it with surgical precision, protecting the ball, making the right reads, and never letting the game get away from him. That combination of volume and care is extraordinarily rare. Wemby's 25 ppg looks modest when you first see it sitting next to the other numbers, but he is playing under 30 minutes per game. The Spurs are managing his workload carefully, which means his raw totals are artificially capped. In his last 5 games before this breakdown was written, he dropped 3 40-point performances. The production is not a question. The minutes restriction is simply compressing it into a smaller sample. This is where the real separation starts to appear. Going forward, AI posted an analysis that became one of the most shared NBA takes of the season. SGA's 8.8 OBPM plus 3 DBPM equals elite two-way guard. 66.5% TS% on 33.4% usage matches only Jokic. Read that again. Only 2 players in the entire league are combining that level of true shooting percentage with that level of usage. Both of them are in this MVP race. That is not a coincidence. That is a reflection of how good this particular group of players actually is. There has been exactly one season in NBA history where a guard scored more efficiently while averaging 30-plus points per game. That was Steph Curry during the 2015-16 season at the absolute peak of his powers on a team that won 73 games. SGA is in that company right now. His 1.6 points per shot attempt at his volume is something guards simply are not supposed to do. The geometry of basketball should not allow it, and yet here we are. Wemby shooting splits, 59-35-83, producing 62.6% true shooting, which sits 4.1 points above the league average. Here is the critical detail. His offensive case, taken on its own, is already one of the best in the league this season. He is not a defensive specialist who can score. He's a two-way player whose defense is so extraordinary that it makes people undervalue how good his offensive numbers actually are. That combination, elite offense plus historically elite defense, is what makes his MVP argument so difficult to dismiss. Now the advanced metrics, and this is genuinely where things get complicated in a way that is both frustrating and fascinating. Estimated plus-minus EPM. SGA sits at the top of the entire league, not by a small margin. This is one of the highest EPM seasons recorded in this century, right up there with Harden in 2019 and Curry in 2016. Those are the benchmarks. That is the company SGA is keeping by this measure. Crafted plus-minus, flip the leaderboard entirely. Jokic is 1, Wemby and SGA sit right behind him. The same 3 names, completely different order. Daily plus-minus, flip it again. Jokic 1, this time with a noticeable gap between him and the field. By this model, it is not particularly close. LEBRO and metric, Wembanyama 1. Defensive EPM, Wembanyama 1 and not close. Same players, same season, totally different MVP depending entirely on which metric you trust. That is not a flaw in the debate, that is the debate. Every single one of these models is built by smart people using real data. They're all measuring something real. They just disagree on what the most important thing to measure actually is. At NBL captured the philosophical core of the argument perfectly. It clearly shows Jokic the MVP. We're talking about most valuable, means the most impactful for the team wins, not the best player on the best team. That framing, most valuable versus best player, is exactly why this conversation has no clean ending. It depends entirely on how you define the award, and reasonable, informed people define it differently. The wins added models attempt to answer the question that the raw stats cannot. How many actual victories is each player directly responsible for? Jokic is responsible for roughly a third of Denver's wins this season. One player, a third of everything his team has accomplished. That number reflects something that the box score can only partially capture: the degree to which the entire Denver offensive system flows through him, requires him, and collapses without him. And yet SGA leads the entire league in total wins added this season. That is a serious argument that does not get nearly enough attention in the mainstream MVP conversation. When you translate his individual performance into actual team wins, he sits at the top of the entire league. Not top 3. Number 1. Wemby's per 75 possessions numbers line up with the other candidates far closer than people realize. His minutes restriction is artificially suppressing his raw totals across every category, wins added included, before the conversation even starts. If you were playing the minutes that SGA or Jokic are playing, his counting stats would look fundamentally different. The model has to account for that compression, and not all of them do it correctly. Now here is where Wemby's case stops being interesting and starts being genuinely impossible to ignore. Forget estimating impact through complex statistical models. What if you just measured the team's performance directly, with him on the floor versus without him? That is what on-off data does, and the numbers are extraordinary. The Spurs' defensive rating with Wemby on the floor, 105.1, league leading. To put that in perspective, OKC currently sits first in the league as a team with a defensive rating of 106.9. The San Antonio Spurs, with Victor Wembanyama on the floor, are essentially playing at the defensive level of the Oklahoma City Thunder, the best defensive team in the league. Except the Spurs only reach that level when one specific player is playing. Without him, 117.1. That rating would rank 20th in the entire league. The same roster, the same coaches, the same system, just without Wembanyama, and they fall from 1st to 20th. The drop-off is not a slope, it is a cliff. The headline number plus 17 net rating swing. The San Antonio Spurs are 17 points per 100 possessions better when Victor Wembanyama is on the basketball court. That is the largest on-off differential in the entire league. It is not close. No other player in this race, no other player in the league, produces a team-level swing of that magnitude. He leads the NBA in blocks by a landslide, but the blocks are only the visible part of his defensive impact. Opponents shoot only 53.6% at the rim when he contests shots, and here's the number that really tells the story. They only take 26.2% of their total shot attempts at the rim when Wembanyama is on the floor. That figure ranks second in the entire league. The moment he goes to the bench, that number jumps to 31.6%. Teams are not just shooting worse at the rim because of him, they are actively avoiding the rim entirely. They are changing their entire offensive architecture based on where he is standing. Among 31 players in the league who defended at least 1,000 ball screens this season, the most common offensive action in the modern NBA, Wemby's 0.85 points per possession allowed ranks first in the entire league. In drop coverage, 0.84 PPP. In switch coverage, 0.94 PPP against a league average of 0.96. He is suffocating in every defensive scheme, against every coverage, in every situation. The Spurs were projected to win 45 games this season. They are on pace for 62. That is a 17-win jump, one of the largest single-season improvements in recent NBA history. That is not normal development. That is not a good draft class clicking together. That is not a coaching adjustment. That is a full organizational identity transformation. And the player at the absolute center of that transformation carries a plus 17 on-off swing. The numbers do not lie about what he means to that team. Nothing exposes true value faster than the gap between what a team was projected to be and what it actually became. Preseason projections are built on rosters, historical performance, health assumptions, and competitive context. When a team dramatically outperforms those projections, something extraordinary happened. The question is always, what Denver Nuggets, projected for 54 wins, currently pacing around 52? Jokic is putting up a statistical hallucination of a season, but the team has not outperformed its preseason expectations in a meaningful way. Injuries have played a role. The narrative does not write itself cleanly. Oklahoma City Thunder, projected for 63 wins, on pace to beat that number. Dominant performance across the board. But that projection also raises a legitimate question. How much of OKC's success is directly attributable to SGA, and how much reflects an elite system with exceptional depth and coaching? The Thunder are good at every position. They were projected to be good. They are good. The uplift story is not as dramatic as the other candidates. San Antonio Spurs, projected for 45 wins, on pace for 62. Stop. Read that again. 45 wins projected. 62 wins on pace. In one single season, with a 22-year-old playing under a minutes restriction who missed time early in the year with injury. That is a 17-win improvement, one of the most dramatic single-season transformations in the modern era of the sport. If MVP is about lifting your team to somewhere it was never supposed to reach, there's only one answer in this race, and it is not the player with 88 first-place media votes. The honest counterweight: historically, MVP voters reward teams with the best records. Top seeds win the award at a disproportionate rate. The OKC narrative is simpler and cleaner for SGA because the Thunder finished with the best record in the Western Conference. That clarity matters to voters. That is not nothing. Wemby's defensive case deserves its own dedicated space in this breakdown, because summarizing it with blocks and a defensive rating does not capture what is actually happening on that end of the floor. 197 total blocks leads the league by a margin that makes second place look like a different category entirely. But focusing only on the blocks is like judging a chef only by how many dishes they clean up. The block is the outcome. The presence is the cause. Teams are taking more corner threes this season against the Spurs, not because their offensive system prioritizes corner threes, but because Wembanyama has made the paint private property. They are shooting from further away in worse positions with lower percentages because the alternative is challenging a 74 player with an 8-foot wingspan at the rim. That is a decision coaches are making in film sessions before the game even starts. He is altering opposing offensive game plans at the strategic level. The ball screen data tells the same story with different numbers. 0.85 points per possession defending ball screens, first in the entire league. Drop coverage 0.84 PPP. Switch 0.94 against a league average of 0.96. There is no coverage scheme in which he is not elite. There is no situation in which opposing offenses find an advantage against him. DPOY is already his. That conversation is over. The only real debate is whether a generational, historically unprecedented defensive season, combined with 25 points on elite shooting efficiency, is enough to move the MVP needle past the media consensus that has already coronated SGA. Right now, the voters are not fully there, but the numbers have been screaming the answer for months. These three groups are watching completely different races. And each one tells you something important about how this award actually works. The media, the February straw poll gave SGA 78 out of 101 first-place votes. That is not a race, that is a coronation ceremony. The final Tim Bontemps voter poll reported by at NBA Courtside, SGA 88 first-place votes, Wembanyama 8, Jokic 3, Luka 0, done, stamped, shipped. The straw poll has correctly predicted the MVP winner every single year going back to 2016. That is not luck, that is not coincidence. That is a pattern built on the reality that the voters who participate in the straw poll are the same voters who ultimately decide the award. If history holds, and it has held for nearly a decade, SGA wins this trophy. The important caveat: the February poll dropped before Wemby's late season surge, before his comments lit the internet on fire, and before the odds market completely reversed direction. The betting market, Wemby's MVP odds moved from plus 1900 to plus 225 almost overnight. That is not a gradual shift in sentiment. That is a market in full panic mode. We're pricing a candidate based on new information arriving faster than the models can absorb it. For the first time in his career, Wembanyama jumped to the one spot on the MVP frontrunner rankings, and it was not purely about what was happening on the court. A specific moment off the court ignited the momentum shift and turned a long shot into a genuine frontrunner conversation. Basketball Reference's MVP probability model currently has Jokic around a 60% chance to win, which sounds like a clear answer until you remember that the same model is trying to make sense of a race where the on-off data points one direction, the media votes point another, and the betting markets are pointing somewhere else entirely. The fans, an NBA Central poll with 76,000 votes, had one player capturing over 62% of the total. That player is Luka Doncic, who is almost certainly ineligible due to the game's played threshold, which means the fan vote is less a prediction and more a statement. It is the NBA's viewing public saying, "We know who the most exciting player in this league is, and we want that player recognized." The disconnect between what the fans want and what the media voters decide is one of the most consistently interesting sub-stories of every MVP season. This year, it is more pronounced than ever. Here is the final frame. The reason this race keeps flipping is not because the data is unclear. It is because the award itself has multiple valid definitions, and each definition produces a different winner. If MVP means the best player on the best team, the answer is SGA. 88 media first-place votes, most total wins added in the league. 31.5 PPG on the most efficient volume scoring the NBA has seen from a guard since Curry in 2016. The media has spoken. The pattern says it holds. If MVP means the biggest per possession two-way impact on his team, the answer is Wembanyama. Plus 17 on off-net rating swing, the largest in the league. 105.1 defensive rating with him on the floor against a 117.1 without him. LEBRO in metric 1, defensive EPM 1, a 17-win team transformation from a player on a minutes restriction. If MVP means the most statistically dominant individual performance, the answer is Jokic. 27.8, 12.8, 10.8 as a center in 2026. On pace to lead the league in both rebounds and assists simultaneously. One in crafted plus-minus, one in daily plus-minus. Responsible for roughly a third of Denver's wins by himself. If MVP means pure production combined with the people's choice, the answer is Luka. 33.6 ppg. 60 and 50-point eruptions. Over 62% of 76,000 fan votes, and almost certainly ineligible. The voter who wants to feel safe picks SGA. The voter who wants to be right in 10 years picks Wemby. The voter who believes the award should go to the most statistically dominant individual picks Jokic. Any of the three eligible candidates would be a worthy, defensible, legitimate MVP. This season is not about identifying one obvious winner. It is about deciding which version of greatness, consistency, transformation, or statistical domination was the hardest to ignore over the course of a full season. The race has flipped before. It will probably flip again before the votes are counted. And that, more than any single stat, more than any metric, more than any media poll, is what makes this the greatest MVP race the NBA has produced in a generation. So is it SGA, Wemby, Jokic? That answer flips the moment you change what you're measuring. Here's what we want from you in the comments. Drop your MVP vote, SGA, Wemby, or Jokic, and give us the one stat that locks it in for your guy. Is Wemby's plus 17 on off swing enough to override 88 media first place votes? Does a center averaging 28, 13, 11 in 2026 not deserve to be the loudest name in this conversation? Is SGA leading the entire league in wins added the argument that has been buried under every other storyline this season? Pick your side, build your case, and share this video with that one person in your life who still thinks this race is already decided, because based on everything we just walked through, it clearly is not. If you enjoy real NBA breakdowns like this, you will like what is coming next. Hoop Action TV is where these conversations live. Subscribe, hit the bell, and make sure you are here when the next one drops.